So first thing, it's not a completely new thing that you guys might be knowing, but it is most common thing, but it is the most tricky thing which you guys need to understand everywhere, because you need to be innovative while you write an answer. Urban flooding is a very common concept, okay, but why is it in use? Particularly because of the Chennai rainfall that is happening, northeast monsoon rainfall that is happening in Chennai. It is predicted that it is receiving 20% excess rainfall, because of which now Chennai is seeing the flooding again. Way back in 2015, that flooding in Chennai city has taken place. Now it has repeated after 6 years. So why is this repeating? Even though we learned about the devastation that is caused, that the floods are causing, why are we not changing ourselves? What kind of things that we need to take into consideration while we focus on urban flooding? But anyway, the concept of flooding, in this aspect we should understand the present scenario, present status, okay, and then you need to understand the causes, okay, and then what are the challenges or way forward. In a way we can discuss some innovative ideas. Here it is where you need to be more proactive and innovative while you write an answer in case of urban flooding, okay. But understand the present status. If you take the geography of India, okay, most of the western part is not prone to flooding as per our data, okay. Take these coastal areas, these coastal deltas are prone to flooding mostly because of cyclonic reasons, okay, cyclonic rainfall, and then these upper reaches of rivers, okay, this is due to glacial melting and sometimes even due to cloud bursts that take place, right? So Uttarakhand 2013, if you guys remember, in 2013 Uttarakhand floods were due to cloud burst only. So based on these natural causes or natural location of these places of Indian geography, almost 12% of our area, of our geographical area is prone to flooding, okay. But however, this data does not cover the aspect of urban flooding, okay. So there is still a vacuum in the data collection of what the extent of urban flooding is not known even now, okay, because the process of urbanization itself is like that. Urbanization is actually a growing process, so data collection should be continuous. So there are certain aspects where the data collection has not yet begun, and now this year in Mumbai city there is a program called as iFlows. If you guys remember, there is program called as iFlows. I think it has been started in this year's May. Okay, if you go back this year's current affairs and refer May news magazines or somewhere, you'll get to know about this iFlows. Okay, this is a project which collects data at the real time for the urban flooding aspects. Okay, so it will see the level of water and decide whether the flood will be extreme case or some kind of grading kind of thing can happen. So that is the program, that is the initiative with regard to iFlows, and it is expected that this kind of initiative will be brought into the various cities like Kolkata, Bangalore, Hyderabad and Chennai. Okay, and this urban flooding, is there any pattern for this urban flooding? There is no pattern at all. For example, these coastal areas or these wetland regions or these riverine areas in northern India, there can be some pattern, like there can be a glacier melt or cloud burst, some heavy rainfall, or there could be some cyclone here. There could be some pattern, but urban flooding is not having any pattern also as such. If there is small rainfall for 1 hour, enough, or Gandhinagar itself, right? So that pattern should be understood somehow. That is one of the factor that we need to focus upon. But anyway, understand what are the causes now. How will you write the causes? There will be some natural causes and there are anthropogenic causes. So as I said, what are the natural causes? Glacial melting, okay, cyclonic rainfall, even erratic rainfall due to monsoons, due to climate change. You should include the relevant new aspects in news also. No, climate change is also bringing certain changes in the weather patterns, in the sense that erratic rainfalls or the frequency of cyclones are aggravated due to these changes in climate change. What else can you think of? But anyway, mostly anthropogenic causes will be most important for us. So tell me, what kind of anthropogenic reasons can you give for the causes? Yes, very good. Drainage. How will you explain this drainage system? How will you explain this drainage system as the cause? Okay, see, our Gandhinagar has drainage system. So what is the problem here? That is different. I am talking about drainage system. No, understand one thing, capacity. It does not have enough capacity to hold that much of water. That is why overflow of water will be there. Or else sometimes there are no drainage systems only. Otherwise, poor maintenance. Okay, three things are required here while you talk about drainage thing. Having drainage system is not enough. Okay, you need to have that capacity which will hold that water, and then proper maintenance. In 2015, what was the main reason that Chennai floods took place? Because of this drainage system only, they were not maintaining it properly. There is a lot of blockades or lot of material that was present within the drainage system, which is blocking the flow of water. Right? So tell me, what is the second reason after drainage? Damming urban areas.
Leads cost to urban area, like Kerala also because of
Kerala, okay. Kerala is a different aspect here, because Kerala is has a very natural ecosystem, okay, and it has several backwaters and river systems. Of course, it will be prone to flooding. It is not the nature that is a problem. That is our urbanization itself is problem. What is meant by urbanization here? Terrain alteration. Okay, as he said, concretization of lands, which is reducing the seepage of water. Understand the connectivity. That is how you need to connect that points and then write an answer. Okay, reducing seepage. Okay, because of concretization. Okay, connectivity. When water percolation is not there, obviously water will stay in the ground. Okay. What else aspects of urbanization can you talk of? See, ponds or wetlands, you can say. Okay, that is a very good point, but talk about wetlands as such. Wetlands includes all these aspects which you are talking about, ponds or low-lying areas or everything. And wetland areas are actually buffer areas to store and ensure that groundwater percolation will take place. Percolation of water to the ground level will take place. These wetlands have so significance in the sense that they attract, they attract even aesthetic feelings, in the sense that they attract animals, they attract birds and all, right? So in Chennai especially, this wetlands encroachment has been very frequent due to the urbanization, even in Bangalore nowadays. Okay. Of course, that is a very good point here. Next. What can you think of?
Leaves around the river tributary is not made.
Leaves, okay.
And the river tributary. Some of there are damages because of the flooding. The water from there is coming outside.
So, okay, yeah. Particularly, that is very specific to Chennai you are talking about. There is a river tributary which passes through Chennai, which is actually affecting. Yeah. Is it completely anthropogenic also sometimes? Because what it is observed is that northeast monsoon which take place in Tamil Nadu, You know now why northeast monsoon will take place at that particular point of period. Okay, it takes the warm water from Bay of Bengal, the northeast winds, and then bring rainfall to the Chennai coast. So what happens is that whenever there is an El Nino event or La Nina event, El Nino, specifically it is corresponding to the poor southwest monsoons, but it is observed that northeast monsoons are very high, very voluminous during El Nino event. That corresponding things is also observed, should be observed. So in 2015 that is the thing. And even now it is a completely different thing. There was an excess rainfall, but there is no El Nino event. So it is a thing to think about for us. So there is no El Nino event, there is no natural cause. So most of the causes of Chennai floods this year are particularly anthropogenic. Right? And what else? Deforestation. Okay. Or else removal of trees in urban areas which help in percolation of water, or else store this water which is coming, which is being collected. So these are several of these causes of urban flooding. So how will you write about the effect of this urban flooding? Effects of urban flooding. Urban flooding, pollution.
The people around the south should be more.
Think. Think in different dimensions. What is the economic impact or effect? That is social impact. Social impact on health, spread of diseases, of course, diarrhea, cholera, typhoid, these aspects. That kind of situation will also help in breeding of mosquitoes. Right, malaria, prone to malaria. What else social aspects in flooding? Movement of people, or else here economic aspect, loss of infrastructure, damage to infrastructure, damage to roads. Okay, damage to road, it will increase the cost of administration for government. Okay, for governance, cost is going to increase now to build that infrastructure back again. You see that connectivity. And then since movement of people is restricted, definitely economic activity will be slowed or lowered. Right? What is the political impact? Can anyone think of it? Tricky one, no? Okay, you guys identify this one. Next week I'll definitely ask, okay? See, understand one thing. Climate change itself has become a political aspect in these days. Have you observed the case of Australia? Australia, since the past 15 to 20 years, the frequency of change in prime ministers has been too huge. That is mainly because of the environmental politics that is taking place there. So what will happen is, in political impact, there is some kind of piecemeal approach that can take place. Okay, what will happen after any kind of this disaster comes in? Government will start telling that we'll give this amount as ex gratia and all. There, the aspect of what you say, misusing of money can take place. Okay, that is what happened with Kerala floods. Okay, where the union government has said that okay, we'll be providing this much of amount, and they haven't provided, and then that became a what you say agenda in Kerala elections, where again BJP lost there. That is the thing that will happen. Okay, that is how opposition finds a way. Understanding, no? So tell me, how will you address these aspects of urban flooding? Afforestation, okay. Then
In Delhi also, the Delhi high initiatives are created some infrastructure for the
infrastructure, that means, see, think in broader terms, okay. Infrastructure and all these are good. That means you are talking about technology, use of technology. Okay, you can mention those examples which you are talking about. Otherwise, simple as that, we need rainwater harvestment. Okay. And then we can use some kind of permeable materials for construction of roads and all, so that water will percolate to the ground. Permeable material. So for this R&D is required. Okay. What else? Development of smart cities are there. I would say we should develop sponge cities. Okay. What do you understand by sponge cities? Yeah. Water absorption or water extraction should take place as quickly as possible. Such kind of smoothness or sponginess should be there for cities. Okay. See, and there are certain recommendations which are coming up which are very general in the sense that wetland policy, urban wetland policy should be there, which should encourage presence of wetland for every 10 square kilometers. Okay. Okay, we do not know whether that will help or not, but anyway, that is one of the recommendations that we can talk about. Can we make artificial wetlands?
Yes, sir.
Yes. There are, we can make. And okay, that is, he is talking about afforestation and all, that you can all talk about these sponge cities and all. In one word, okay, you can write many points, no, which is more innovative also somewhere. And data collection is very much important. As I said, this iFlows. And there is one National Meteorological Hydrometeorological project or data collection or network. National Hydrometeorological Network is being developed, okay, for this data collection. And one more thing, in order to ensure that there is proper mitigation efforts taking place for flooding, we need to focus upon impact based forecasting. Data we have collected the data, we know what kind of impact that it could have, and then based on that, if any kind of rain, if there is a heavy rainfall that is going to take place, without telling, instead of telling this is the amount of rainfall that is going to take place, we should predict what kind of impact that it could have and then take remedial measures as quickly as possible. So this is a new way of forecasting method that is being developed by AMD. They'll write, but see, there is slight difference here. What is happening is, see this case of air pollution. Nowadays we have the National Ambient Air Quality Index and all. They are mentioning this is the severity of, this is the air level, this is the severity, and this is the actions that we are taking place. That is that present in flooding and all? No, that kind of measure should be developed for flooding also. You are getting my point, no? There is certain charge that is prepared for ambient air quality. That is, there are 6 colors there. That this is severe and all. If it is severe, this is the action that we are going to take. Delhi also, and Delhi Pollution Board is also taking that same measures, no? During this particular period of time, you will see that Delhi is having that problem. Yeah, that is the one which is preparing that chart, no? Central Pollution Control Board, with the help of IMD, has prepared that chart. Or that is what forecasting is there. Forecasting, whenever we talk about forecasting, IMD will come into the picture, but it should be impact based. So the Central Groundwater Commission or Central Water Commission, these bodies should also come in and talk about the impact that is taking place. And then this National Disaster Management Authority is the first in place there, which is first, that force is placed there which can take the data for how the impact has been there. So all these 4 institutions should come together and build this impact based forecasting system. It is not just predicting of this is the rainfall that is going to take place and all. Somewhere that prediction might be wrong also, no? Sometimes. Yeah. But ultimately, if that is occurring, what kind of proactivity that we should show? That will happen only with impact-based forecasting. Then that procedures will be placed then and there itself. It will be more simpler and easier to understand to the people as well as the administration to how to react to that particular situation, particular event that is taking place. You getting my point, no? The connectivity. Okay. So these are some of the innovative ideas which I could think of. If you are able to bring out some other ideas, policy that is always there. You'll always function. That is, I'm not touching upon these areas which you'll already know most of the time. Okay. Anyway, let us.
Happen every year, sir.
Huh?
Every year.
Every year. So urban flooding is not having pattern. No, that is what I'm telling. Chennai floods. When did it take place? 15. No, 6 years. So it is not taking place every year. If it is taking place every year, we can think it of as a natural event only. No. It is not a natural event as such.
Some of the places in southern area every year.
But it could be natural mainly in the coastal areas where these rivers deltas are there, and even the Ganga Brahmaputra basin areas where the rivers are always changing. The Kosi river or the Brahmaputra river, Assam floods will be very frequent mostly for you guys. But what about Kerala floods? Kerala floods were due to cyclone Oki. Okay, no? So, it should be something different also. It is not regular. Anyway, this was in news again. Why is it in news? Fisherman was being killed and there was an article in Hindu 3 days back. So, mainly the issue has been because of the killing of fishermen has been due to the lack of boundary settlement, maritime boundary settlement, and also the Sir Creek issue. I think you guys might have might know it very well. It's a very common topic. Anyway, I'll deal with it as quickly as possible since I think you guys are aware. He is nodding his head too. So let me see. So certain data has been presented in that article, which talks that there are about 558 Indian fishermen in Pakistan prison, and then 74 Indian or Pakistan prisoners in India, and then there are no consular access, okay, to these people or the families of these people, right? And then 1200 Indian vessels are still in the hands of Pakistan. This is the data that is being given, okay? And you need to mention this data to understand or substantiate the problem. When you write an answer, just writing introduction is not enough. You need to substantiate your introduction with relevant data. That is where I'm mentioning these things. But anyway, understand the geography. Okay, this is Gujarat. I think this is somewhere here like this. Okay, this is the region you think. Okay, think this is the Sir Creek. Somewhere like this. Okay, drawing it rough, approximately. Yeah. Here itself it will be there somewhere. Above that. Okay, let it be. But anyway, Sir Creek is something like this. Okay, there are several of these inland waters that is coming up. But understand, you guys know this division of water, no? External waters, internal waters under the United Nations Convention on Law of Seas. So understand, if you know about this one, we can go forward there. What will happen is, see, this is the continent. You think this is the coastal line of our country. Okay, understand this as the internal water. Okay, from the coastline to the 12 nautical miles, it is known as territorial waters. Territorial waters. Okay. From here, from coastline to 24 nautical miles, it is known as contagious zone. Okay. From internal waters to 200 nautical miles, it is known as, and beyond 200. Okay. Okay. Same thing is there for airways. You know. You don't know. See, until this territorial waters, it is known as national airways. Later it is international area. Same thing is there in this convention only. So, till 200 nautical miles, the country has the economic exclusive access for economic extraction of economic resources or anything. Okay. But according to Indian law, what Indian law provides is that if any vehicle or any ship or naval vessel or any vessel is traveling through these within these 200 nautical miles, if it is a peaceful one, they will be having a safe passage. Okay, if there is some kind of submarine or warship that is going to travel in this exclusive economic zone, they have to take permission. Otherwise, they will be taking action. So, in the case of Italian Marines, okay, that is a different issue. I will come to that later. Okay. So, what is happening is in Gujarat, whenever fisherman goes for fishing and venturing into the sea, unknowingly or most of them will be going there unknowingly only. We cannot tell them that they know. They do not understand the international border there properly. So, if they cross the international border, the line, okay, that is separating between these two countries, okay, if they cross this particular line, this Pakistan will consider it as trespassing into this territory, as it is taking this fishermen into its custody and sometimes even killing. Okay, but these are fishing vessels. They require something called as safe passage. Why there is a need to kill them? But anyway, that tussle will continuously happen. But understand one thing, there are the disputes which is going back even before independence, okay. That is a dispute between, I think, this region was occupied by Sindh rulers and this was occupied by Kutch rulers. So there was a tussle about this, for this occupancy of this region between these rulers. That is still continuing now after independence also. But anyway, understand this aspect. What is happening is both the countries are presenting different maps to the international agencies. This is what our map is, this is what our map is. So Sir Creek is, Pakistan says that entire Sir Creek is its own, okay. It draws the international line here, okay, international line here, and then India considers the international division between these as at the middle of this Sir Creek. So there are certain laws in this United Nations Convention on Laws of Seas which will decide on how to decide a boundary on international waters. So India considers this Sir Creek as a navigable one. So that is why the middle one should be the international boundary between these two countries. But Pakistan doesn't see it in that fashion. Okay. Pakistan doesn't consider whatever India says, it should have that tit for tat answer, no. It will consider that it is not a navigable one. So entire region should be under its control. What else? And Pakistan also wants this region to be in dispute with India along with Kashmir. Okay, it wants the disputes to remain. That has been the attitude of Pakistan. Because that is very relevant from the several steps that India and Pakistan have both taken. I will talk about those steps in detail, not in detail but as a timeline. Okay, because that is somewhere back in 1989 or somewhere it has started from there. But recent one is 2007 initiative which has not been working well. From 2013 it has been stopped, the talks have been stopped. Okay. So that is the difference of opinions between these two countries which is still making this dispute lagging. So apart from this Sir Creek, since this issue has not been solved, the maritime dispute, okay, with India and Pakistan, okay, this is Sir Creek dispute and this extends to the maritime system, maritime area, Arabian Sea. The dispute is persisting because of this thing. So India wants to look at this maritime dispute that it has with Pakistan as well as the Sir Creek dispute as separate issues. No, Pakistan doesn't want. It wants to encourage and say that these both are interconnected and these should be resolved in a single way. That means those two should be resolved in a through one action or something. They should not be looked at separate issues and all. So there are several steps which I told you that were taken place way back in 1989. There was a working group that was set up and they had several rounds of talks, and it was assumed that none of them have been successful. And then 1994, India has published a non-paper to Pakistan saying that we'll have an agreement, an open resolution, okay, open consultation and agreement actually. We'll have an open consultation. Let us sit all together, including fishermen, the regions, the Sindh region or the Gujarat region, in the governments, local governments as well as central governments. Let us have an open discussion and bring out an early discussion. But anyway, that has not been successful. And then in 1998, there was a working group that was set up again. And this group has also failed in its functioning. And in 2007, there was a joint judicial commission that was set up with the 8 judges, 4 from India, 4 from Pakistan. But since 2013, this commission has been dysfunctional or non-functional, and that is clearly mentioned in that news article. Okay? Now tell me, how will you resolve this issue? That is the main contention for us. No, this is all story. It is here where we need to think of how will we resolve this issue.
These negotiations will not come if India and Pakistan is
Yeah, what should happen is, but anyway, thing is that the attitudinal change in the sense that they need to look at this Kashmir issue and Sar Creek issue as separate issues. Combining them will not be fruitful even for Pakistan. Pakistan should understand this thing first. Okay? Look at these incidents as separately. Look at this. In political science, there is a theory called functionalism in international theories. Okay, so that is the theory which was applied with China by India. Okay, wherever there is convergence, there will cooperate, and then think of the disputes at a later time. That is why India and China are having this huge economic cooperation. Same thing when we are trying to implement with Pakistan, that is not being reciprocated by Pakistan. Pakistan and India are having huge economic benefits if they process trade between them in a peaceful way. But that is not happening. India has given the most favored nation status to Pakistan, but Pakistan has not reciprocated it. Right? No? So that is what? Resolve these issues in a separate way, not in a combined fashion. Look at it separately and resolve it separately. Next. United Nations Convention on Law of Seas. These conventions should be adhered by both the countries. They should be respected. Right? And then third, there should be extradition treaty. What is extradition treaty? Do you guys know? What do you mean by extradition treaty? So it is where I was talking about Italian Marines, okay? Some Italian Marines have killed Kerala fishermen. Yeah. So what happened is, since they killed the Indian fishermen, it was said that they need to be, they need to have a trial in Indian courts itself. But Italy, since India and Italy have an extradition treaty, these Italian Marines are going to be tried in Italian courts. They will be transferred there based on the crime that they have conducted here. So that is the kind of extradition treaty. So it is said that since the fishermen have trespassed into Pakistan waters, okay, though they are charged under Pakistan law, let them reach home and then give the trial in our own soil. But anyway, because of trust deficit between these countries, we are not having that kind of extradition treaty. Even now, our Mumbai blast, the people behind the Mumbai blast are not being still brought into the courts even by Pakistan. So there is a trust deficit, no, again. But anyway, that needs to be resolved anyway. Some kind of proper mechanism should be placed. They need to develop certain kind of policy. This is how we deal with extradition treaty cases, especially at least with Sir Creek issue. Otherwise, 774 fishermen now. Think about those families. Right? Can you think of any other ideas? Anyway, one thing which was suggested in the article itself, which says that we should need to revive that JJC, Joint Judicial Commission, which has been dysfunctional till 2013. Okay, then there were efforts recently. I think in 2019, government has taken some efforts to revive this thing. But since the trouble that is happening with Imran Khan and our government, at UN even they are fighting, there are exchange of words between these countries that is taking place. So it is still, that is what they are unable to revive, but anyway we need to revive it as quickly as possible. Okay, that was suggestion given in the article itself. But understand the whole issue that safety and rights of fishermen are utmost important here, safety of people other than these boundary disputes. Same thing is happening with Sri Lanka and Tamil Nadu, and we have resolved our boundary disputes with Bangladesh very peacefully, especially land boundary as well as maritime boundary. We have resolved those issues. Such kind of, aggressive method. Anyway, Pakistan is a different state of nature, which makes us difficult to talk with that kind of country. But anyway, we need to find a path, nevertheless. Okay? Sri Lanka, no, it has not yet been resolved. But there is a mechanism placed which is working. Okay, there is a mechanism and exchange of fishermen is taking place peacefully. They are not being detained as such as in Pakistan. Sri Lanka, no, comparative measures means there is a fishermen commission that was placed here, and fishermen from both the sides will be membering that commission, and they will be identifying who is trespassing into this river, into these waters, and then take that remedial measures. So it is a decentralized process that is taking place there. But now and then anyway some problem would arise, I am not saying, but mechanism is not, I am not saying that mechanism is most efficient there. Okay, anyway in these commissions anyway political leaders will be involved in and they will be messing up things. But that is the thing, you have to understand. Mechanism somewhat better than that is present here, at least that is functioning, no. Here the mechanisms are there but they are not functioning. So that should not happen.
So mediator like World Bank.
World Bank, what will World Bank do here?
Policies and giving loan, we have put recommendations like policies.
Here for the dispute.
Dispute in the case of in the Grand Constitution.
Indus Water River Treaty, the World Bank has brokered between India and Pakistan. But what has happened now is that India is looking at resolving issues bilaterally without bringing any kind of third party. That you need to understand, no? Forget about that thing, but recently India's standpoint with resolving issues with Pakistan is that we need to resolve issues bilaterally without involving third party. And that has been vocal from the Indian government since many years. So now if we bring again third parties, because India has learned the lesson, no? What happened during Jawaharlal Nehru's time when that Pakistan has attacked India in 1964 I think, 65. So he has went to the UN to ensure that there is a plebiscite conducted in the Pak occupied Kashmir, but they haven't done, and USA voted against that plebiscite during that United Nations Security Council voting will be there, no? USA voted against India because of non-conducting of that plebiscite in Pak-occupied Kashmir, that problem is still persisting in our country. The world leaders have not been responsive when we are involving third party like that. When they were not responsive, then how will they be feeling responsible now? No. Pakistan has some like-minded countries which is supporting Pakistan. India has certain like-minded countries which is supporting India. So how will we resolve issue if we bring parties will bring third party? Pakistan will sell that, I'll bring some country, Saudi Arabia. India will sell that, I'll bring some France, because France is supporting Indian stand. Again, that tussle will continue, but that is why it is saying that we need to resolve issues bilaterally. Bilaterally, both these countries should only come together and resolve the issues without involving third party. That is where your answer lies. Anyway, next prelims based question is, but I can change it into mains answer also, mains question also. Because that can happen. You can never imagine what UPSC thinks. But okay, UNESCO's Creative Cities Network. Why is it in use? Srinagar. Okay, I think most of you guys are aware of it. So when did this program start? 2004. Okay. What is the aim of this program or this development of this network by UNESCO? It is trying to promote certain cities whose development is based on this skill set or this kind of creativity. Okay. There are 7 creative areas where these cities are given this tag. What are those 7? Gastronomy. Film. Yeah, film. Prelims based question they can be asking. Okay. Folk and craft. Okay. They are combined together. This should be the first answer actually, because this is where Srinagar has given the tag. Okay. Then music. Think of all the cultural items, no? Literature. Architecture, no? Art is there, no, already? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 2 more. Design and media art. These are the 2 extra things. Design. Okay. How many cities which India is included? Okay, 6 cities. So from gastronomy, is there any city? You are living in that city. It was given this tag in the year 2019, last year. Okay, 2 years back. And then film. Don't say Hyderabad, okay? Yeah, Mumbai. And folk and craft. Is there any other city? Jaipur. Way back in 2015, it was given this tag. Okay, and then music. Chennai is there. Yes, Carnatic music. And then recognition for Varanasi. Varanasi Gharana of Hindustani music. Okay, how many? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah. So there are certain areas where we are still lagging. Literature. Okay, design and media. So at what frequency are these tags being given to the cities? At what frequency? Every year, every 3 years or every 2 years? That is a single point which UPSC will pick. You guys won't observe or read anywhere. So how I was observing here, I'll tell you. See, I was collecting the data. I was seeing that first 2015 there were, and then 2017 they were mentioning, and then 2019, and now 2021. So every 2 years they are giving this tag to the cities. It is a point where UPSC will frame a sentence and they'll tell you, they'll confuse you in prelims, definitely. So tell me, in mains, what will be the question if they ask? They'll tell you to write about the relevance or significance of this creating of this thing. What is significance?
Encouraging the local arts by giving this.
Okay. But think of this program's aim itself, no? It wants to build cities which are having the strategically having advantage over this because through this creativity, but it also trying to promote international cooperation between these cities. Chennai and Chinese city, which city is it? Chennai, Mamallapuram in Tamil Nadu, and then some city in China are being collaborated there culturally. Such kind of things, international cooperation. With respect to this creativity of these cities, within these cities. Okay? And as you said, what is the point that you are mentioning?
Encouraging the local body.
Local, that is okay. That is the aim itself. Okay? You guys should be remembering this. What does the goal 11 say? Sustainable cities and communities. So this network is catering to the fulfillment of this sustainable development goal 11, sustainable cities and communities. Third, tourism. When you give that kind of tag, this is a very creative city, there will be huge demand of these tourists, in the international arena. They will be attracted to the cities, especially Hyderabad. Hyderabad, since it is famous for food, you will attract lot of tourists. Yeah, that is true. Tourism. What else? Definitely when tourism will come, definitely there is an employment creation at local level. Right? That is where our next topic is also there. Why there is a demand for local reservations in the states recently. Anyway, since it is a prelims based topic here, we need to talk about UNESCO also. When did UNESCO get established? In the year 1945, it is a United Nations specialized agency, okay, and its headquarters is in Paris. Where is Paris? As if you guys don't know. So what is the aim of this particular body, institution? It seeks to promote peace and cooperation in the areas of education, science and culture. That is where these three, education, science and culture. Right? Does this, for our prelims point of view only, does the institution release any reports which will be asked, which could be asked? There are two important reports. One is Global Education Monitoring Report. Remember, Global Education Monitoring Report. And then UNESCO Science Report. Okay? Global Education Monitoring Report and UNESCO Science Report. Are there any other programs that is being run by UNESCO? No? Heritage sites, yes. Mention them so that you guys might be, whenever it comes in the news, you will be noting them now. Heritage site, Man and Biosphere Reserves program. Biosphere Reserve, UNESCO's tag is also there, no? How many biosphere reserves are there and from India under this program? How many I am saying? At least number. No, it has crossed 10. At least 11 I think. Please go back and check. Okay. And find out the latest one also. And then there is a global geopark network. Okay. What are geoparks? But anyway, that is entirely different issue. Yeah, geographically important regions. There are many things, no? Geographically, there are hotspots which are also geographically important. So geopark is having different kind of criteria. Why we call particular region as geopark? That is developed by UNESCO only. So third, and then fourth. And then fourth is this one only, no? Creative network, creative cities network. And then there is an atlas, I think, that UNESCO has developed. Atlas, yeah. World language, atlas of world languages which are in danger. If you guys are aware of this thing, endangered languages. How many endangered languages are there from India? Okay, but anyway, none of them are critically endangered right now under this UNESCO's list. Okay, that becomes very relevant for your answer writing whenever the question comes. We'll talk about in GS1 paper when they ask you about the aspect of endangered language. What is the impact of loss of knowledge about these languages? What kind of impact that it could have? If a language is lost, the culture itself is lost, the traditional knowledge with that language is lost, the life or the fundamental right of those people to protect their own language will be lost. Language is the fundamental right of the people. Right, that is the impact. That such kind of questions can also be framed. And then you can bring out the data from UNESCO saying that these are the languages which are substantially endangered from India. Understanding the connectivity, no? But anyway, what is time? We'll move on to the next topic. Haryana State Employment Local. Employment of Local Act. Anyway, there are certain provisions here. We'll quickly go through. So it talks about giving reservation, 75% reservation in the establishments having 10 or more employees and drawing salary less than 30,000. That is the connectivity here. Okay, it is not simply that 70%, 75% reservation. And this 75% reservation has been brought by AP government and few other governments also. And this has been very recent phenomena also. This local reservation has been picking up in recent times. And this act is said to be valid for 10 years. And for any violation, there is a punishment given to the establishments. And then compulsory or mandatory collection of data of all the employees by the employer. Okay, that is also there. And then the domicile or residence requirement is of 5 years. If the person is staying in that particular state in the past 5 years, he will be eligible to get this reservation. And previously it used to be 15 years in the draft bill or during discussion, and they have changed it to 5 years. And the reason is somewhat related to vote bank politics also, I'll tell you. So why is this demand for local reservation rising? And getting the ideas of provisions, no? The provisions are, I'm mentioning them to give you a basic idea of how the bill is or the act is. But the larger picture, why this local reservation demand is being risen in these recent times? Some other states. So what? The economy of that Karnataka is growing.
They are working in low wages, sir. So the company is giving.
So it depends upon the skill of that local people, no? Local people are not having the skill. Where will the companies bring the skilled manpower to run their business? See, but anyway, the raising demand is due to, which you are saying, it slightly because of unemployment only at the local level. But somewhere down the line, this unemployment is due to lack of skills of local population, and also low public sector jobs in present times. Recruitment by the government has been lowering year by year. Government jobs are not so rampant as such. Definitely there will be a demand of this. We need a local reservation. Some kind of regionalism feeling will be developed. Okay. And then second reason, as I said, vote bank politics. This you can understand in two ways. One, it is going to appease the local population towards a particular political party. But within this provision, I said you there is a domicile requirement of 5 years. If there is an immigrant from another state living in that particular state since the past 6 to 7 years, he will be eligible for that local reservation. So that particular political party is going to get, he is going to get attracted to that particular political party, so that whenever he will get registered into electoral roll from this particular state, he will be voting. Most of the immigrants won't be participating in elections. They'll be native to some other state where they need to vote, but they'll be working here. Since they gain advantage over them, since they are being supported through local jobs, they might vote for them. That is what the thinking of these political parties have been. So you can think of this in two ways. One, to appease the local population, as well as to imbibe the vote bank of these immigrants within the soil, within the state itself. Okay. But most of the states will have the domicile requirement at a higher scale, okay, not just 5 years. There may be 10 years or more than 5 years, but 5 years is little small here for Haryana, at least this particular act. So what else could be the reasons? Lack of skill anyway, that is there, unemployment. We are not talking about voting right now. We'll talk about this local jobs. Why there is a demand for raising local jobs? Okay, anyway, we'll talk about it later. But what are the concerns? What kind of impact that it could have? What are the concerns for us, for this local employment which we cannot encourage? What are the effect of these things? Tell me.
Investors.
Investors, yes, very good. Since there is a talent crunch that could take place, since the investor won't be able to attract the talent, they won't be interested to invest in that particular state or area. The Gurgaon region of Haryana is too huge. Okay, even for living there, to live in an apartment, you need to have some 80,000 as a rent, as far as I know. Okay, my friends were working there, so I knew about them. But anyway, in that Gurgaon region, it is a very posh area in the sense that the cost of living is too high there. And then what about these local people now then? If that is the case, the talent crunch which is coming, the talented people which are coming from faraway cities, they will be easily accommodated there, since they are finding their jobs. On the contrary, the local people are not finding. But if that is not going to take, if that is the problem there, but anyway, providing reservation is not the solution, no. It will again decrease the talent crunch there, the economic development, because see, if there is a particular apartment, you will see the nearby, there will be tiffin centers. There will be chai shops or something, some kirana shops will be there. See, local people are finding some or the other way, or finding some way to live, if that is being done. But not saying, completely saying that they are not having jobs mainly because of this lack of local reservation is completely wrong. Okay, there might be several factors, no? So that is one of the cause there, one of the concern here. Okay, loss to investors, loss of talent, brain drain could happen. Okay, since these investors are not able to invest in this particular Gurgaon region, they might be going to Bangalore or they might come to Hyderabad. So it is a loss of economic activity for that particular state. State revenue should be going down. That is also one of the concern that could happen. Okay, what else? How is it going to concern our constitution? You should. Sovereignty, no.
Sovereignty,
States are division. No, employment, no. Fundamental rights. There is a freedom of movement and freedom of occupation on the Article 19. So it is going to that concern. No, it is not related to some kind of sovereignty of the particular state or anything. Why we had a GST then if we are taking off sovereignty of that particular state?
job opportunities in
Yeah, that is there. That job opportunities will arise when there is a skill in this country. You know, according to some reports, only 40% of our engineers. Since I am an engineer, I am telling you, our engineers, our engineers are only employed. Only 42% exactly. So how many engineers are being that India is producing? Mass production, that is, okay. Machine based, institution based mass production, not just machine based, okay. Anyway, that is the trouble. Anyway, see, finding the right skill set or developing the right skill set for that particular local population is very much required. Even that is suggested, what is suggested for AP government also. Okay, and then there is one more reason why these reservations are coming up. Okay, establishing an industry, they require land. The state, they will acquire land, industry or investor will acquire land from that particular state and say then certain people will be affected. And they will be writing an agreement that will be rehabilitating them through their jobs in that particular industry, but they are not giving them. So local reservation is found to be one of the solutions there. It can push that rehabilitation measures that an investor or an industry will take place by giving jobs to the local population whose land they are taking, whose premises or surroundings that they are taking to construct the industry. So that is one of the reasons which was mentioned. But the concern, what could be the concern here? Definitely again same concern, the investor or the local think of not, do not think of attracting investments, think of the industries which are already existing. You find a rehabilitation measure, that is very good, but reservation is not the solution, no. You find that rehabilitation measure, find some kind of jobs in those industries who are not fulfilling their promises, identify those things, but reservation as such is not the solution for forcing these industries. This will affect the working of the existing industries itself. Right, no? Since there is a punishable offence in this particular act, those industries or those IT companies or anything, they will be facing huge, what do you say, cost in the sense of these cases that could rise up, the court cases that could come up. So ultimately the important thing, that the way forward thing that you guys need to mention each and every time is that skill development and education, even at the lowest roots of our population, is required. And this skill development is very much required for the next topic which we are going to discuss, that is technical textiles. So why is it in use? Recently our Commerce Minister has mentioned that we are going to increase the export of technical textiles by 5 times. 5 times. Presently it is at 2 billion market, export market for India. Okay, and he wants to increase it to 10 billion by the year 2025. So what are technical textiles? Tell me. Okay, what are these textiles that we are wearing? These are just for aesthetic purpose or some decorative purpose. These are uniform. It's not a conventional thing. These are conventional textile manufacturing. Technical textiles means industry based textiles or functional based textiles or performance based textiles. What do you mean by industry based textiles? Think of any particular industry. Automobile industry is there. Where will you use textiles here? In a car or in a bike? Those are what industrial technical textiles. Okay. Same thing. Think of any other industry, not particularly automobile or anything. Think of any profession as such. For army personnel, they require bulletproof jackets. So there is a huge requirement of building of these or designing of these jackets, which also relevant comes under technical textiles, which should also improve their performance. No, it should be lightweight. Same thing related to sports or fitness nowadays. Shoes, agronomics of this particular shoe design should be so perfect. These all comes under technical textiles. Okay, and then face masks that we are wearing now, the diapers that we give for kids, right? These are all technical textiles. I am giving you a certain idea different ideas so that how you'll understand what is meant by technical textiles. There is a huge demand in the world. Okay, and it is a sunrise industry right now for our in Indian context. So the present status is it is growing at 8% every year in our country. Okay, it is growing at 8%, which is very huge. Okay, what is India's growth rate nowadays? It is not even touching 8 these days. Since the past 5 years or so. So this particular industry itself is growing at 8%, which is very good. Next, globally the market for this technical textiles is about 250 billion. Within this, India is able to tap 19 billion only, and it is less than 0.1% of 250 billion, and that is where India is aiming. Okay, and 2 years back there was a mission that was launched. I will discuss about that mission. Okay, and then the internal penetration of these technical textiles usage has been very poor, in the sense that we are unable to produce textiles for our own consumption or for our own things. Only 5 to 10% penetration is there. But however, in foreign countries like USA, Japan, China, almost 30 to 70% local penetration of these technical textiles has been seen. Whenever this local penetration is there, only then the industries related to technical textiles will be flourishing or profitable, or will be able to see profits when there is a local demand. So there is a dent here, in the sense that there are certain challenges you are able to understand. No? There are certain challenges in development of this technical textiles industry in our country. Okay, this is the present status that you can note. Now tell me, how the question will come is, tell me about the opportunities that India has with regard to technical textiles industry in the country. Opportunities and challenges, that is how they will be framing the question. Because it is completely a new question that is very relevant in recent times. Okay, since 2020 there is a buzz regarding this technical textiles. They'll ask you to write about the opportunities and challenges. What are the opportunities that India has regarding employment creation? Is not an opportunity but an outcome that we are seeing. No? Opportunity means opportunity for that industry to grow. As I said, automobile, there is a demand in automobile sector. So automobile sector is growing at what rate? At 12%. Okay. The manufacturing of cars is increasing. IKEA Motors come in Anantapur right now. So international brands are coming and manufacturing in our country. So definitely we are going to see the rise in demand. The dashboards of these cars are designed through using technical textiles only. No, the seats, the seat belts, every part can be made of technical textiles. Or the rim around that window, All these aspects, even small minute things, there is a huge demand in the automobile sector. With regard to health and hygiene, there is a demand here. As I mentioned earlier, face masks right now, in order to protect not only from corona but also from pollution. Right? There is a raising awareness about these people there is advantages of using these particular health things. Even hospital beds, the operating beds, yeah, PPE kits for doctors even or any personnel, right? All these there is a huge demand right now. What else are the areas that you can think of? Anyway, sports and fitness. And then defense. In order to live at a high altitude, what kind of shoes that a army personnel should be wearing, or what kind of trousers or hankies or anything, gloves or anything that they should be wearing. These can be designed. These are all technical textiles. These are common things that a army personnel will be wearing. In sports, there are many things. No, now it is also going to give promotion to tourism in a way. What adventure tourism is new agenda of this tourism, hiking, bungee jumping, okay, they require special kind of clothing, or else the seawater diving are there, no? In Andaman and Nicobar, there are these aspects that even in, I think even in Vizag they have started recently, I think, maybe, I don't know. In Goa that is there, I think. So they require special kind of suits, no? Protective gears as well as suits. So these are all technical textiles. There are going to be huge demand here. So adventure tourism is one more dimension. So these are several opportunities, and also now the government has a very stable policy, I'll tell you. That is one of the biggest opportunity here. That should be mentioned as an opportunity. There is a National Technical Textile Mission that was launched in the year 2020. Okay. And then there is recently what is this production linked incentive schemes, and these technical textile companies have been included in this scheme. Many technical textile companies have been included. And then FDI reforms have been taken, and 100% FDI under automatic route has been given to this technical textiles industry. So government policy has been very opportunistic in this way, right? And then what is the opportunity? Opportunity is there in youth itself. Skilling them in a right way, will be able to tap that opportunity, right? That is where the challenge also there. So what are the challenges right now? So anyway, another advantage is that, another opportunity is that we are having enough raw materials. The cotton or the jute, only thing is that synthetic products should be developed, chemical products, nylon and all, these production and manufacturing should be improved. Anyway, we are having that way also, in raw material way, since we are producing within our soil, the cost of raw materials will be lowered. Okay, now tell me what are the challenges here? Lack of knowledge first. People do not know what are these technical textiles. They don't know where to use them, how to use them. Why is it very important? Because it is very easy to make. Technical textiles are manufacturing oriented in the sense that they can build a large sheet and then pick up designs easily. For a shirt can they do, or for a saree can they do like that? No. They'll have a piece of cloth and they need to design there itself and then sold. But for technical textiles, they'll have they can make a huge sheet of for particular room and make designs from out of there itself. Though there is a loss of material is also very less there. Technical textiles, if you have a mass manufacturing, so it is very product competitive. So lack of knowledge is one thing, and then skill development should be very much focused here, right? Skill development. So technical textiles is not an easy job. It is a mass scale manufacturing, in the sense that it should be more technical in sense, not like this sari making or t-shirt making, like tailoring or something. It is having more technical, it related to some, it is linked to machines, huge machines for mass scale production. So that kind of skill need to be developed there. So now at present time, none of the skill development machines in India are focusing here. So that is one of the challenge. What else can you think of? Knowledge, skill development. Are there any financial problems here? Can you think? Anyway, product diversification is one of the challenge, in the sense that I told you the different areas where we can develop products, but India's product development has been very poor, in the sense that it is focusing majorly on automobile sector. There are many areas like sports or anything. Still we are dependent on imports in this technical textiles industry. That is one of the huge challenge, 40% or 30 to 40% of global market is taken away by the countries like USA, China, Japan. Okay, now Japan, where is the capacity of Japan? What is the capacity of India? India can definitely look into it and tap into this product, okay, tap into this thing, okay. But anyway, as I told you many initiatives that government has taken, like production link incentive scheme, and then there is 100% FDI in automatic route, okay, and then there is something called as Technotex. There is some kind of an exhibition that is being conducted by Ministry of Textiles as well as FICCI, okay. So that it will bring out the talent pool and bring out the people across the industries and talk about the development of these technical textiles within this, so that the exchange of information, exchange of knowledge could take place, okay. And then lastly, the National Technical Textile Mission. This is the most important thing, okay. This is what the government policy will talk about. National Technical Textile Mission. It has 4 components. One is research, development and innovation. Okay, for this government has given 1,000 crores. Okay, and then export promotion. As I said, the recent ministry has itself said that we need to have 5-fold increase. Okay, and then market development. So India is going to, now what is the market for India? It is about 19 billion. It wants to grow under this mission. Government want to grow it to 40 to 50 billion dollars by 40 to 50 by 2024. It is a 4-year mission, okay, remember, 2020, 21 to 23, 24. Okay, mission comes under the which ministry? That is where UPSC prelims questions will be asked, no? Ministry of Textiles. Remember. And then lastly, employment and skill promotion. So it is touching upon most of the challenges that India is facing. So evaluating of this particular mission right now is not good, since it is very nascent. Only maybe after 2 years or 1 year we will be able to understand the challenges that the Indian government is facing, particularly with this particular mission. Okay. Okay, we'll end here. We'll meet next week. Thank you.